One of the important things that we've learned as we've been sharing the book over these past months is that the book and the steps are all of a piece. You really can't take any part and sort of separate away and say this only stands on its own, because everything ties together with everything else. Just as an example, we've been studying the third step and the text in the third step for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And what did we find out? We found out that in order to get into the third step, it was necessary that we have become convinced that everything that came before it was true and correct, and that it was for our benefit, and that we wanted what we found, and that we were willing to go to any lengths to get it. We also now have come to understand that the third step is simply a waypoint along the journey to sobriety and to a spiritual awakening, although it is a very substantial leap of faith, because we're going from the place of rebellion and defiance when we got here to a place where now we have become willing to let God be the director of our lives, to let Him be the Father and we be the child. And this is a decision which is really the crux of the third step, this decision to allow, not only to allow this to happen, but to make sure that we do our part so that it can happen. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's pretty simple. We have a major problem we get here. Our minds are cluttered up, stopped up. We have a kind of a psychic stoppage, and we're blocked from God, and we're loaded with guilt and remorse and shame, and we're dealing with all these defects of character and these insanities and this screwy thinking. And all of this is going to have to be dissipated in some way in order for us to fulfill what we've decided to do, which is to let God in and for Him to be the director. In other words, the moment that we decided we were going to quit playing God because it didn't work, and we decided that hereafter we would turn to God as our director, we then had to make a determination that we were going to go forward with whatever work it would take in order to be set free from those things which block us from Him. Furthermore, as we got into the third step, we found out that God was going to give us everything we need. But there were some things we had to do. We had to stay close to Him, and we had to perform His work well. But now we realize we're not close, we're still blocked. And so therefore, the first task will be to get unblocked, to be freed from the things which keep us from God, which keep us from recovery, which keep us from sanity and being restored to sanity, and literally which in the past, of course, have kept us drunk. And so as we did our third step, one of the things which became critical there is that we committed ourselves to go forward with the rest of the steps so that we could be set free. And then we went to God in the third step prayer, and we asked Him specifically to do that. We asked Him to take away our difficulties, so that the victory He gives us over those difficulties, that guilt, remorse, and shame, and defects, and insanity, would allow us to be examples to the people we wanted to help of His power and His love and His way of life working in and through us. This was our prayer. We also asked Him to set us free from self. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Because we'd already found out, as we got into the third step text, that we were tied up in self. The self was at the root of our troubles. And we also found out that we could not be free of self on our own. We were going to need God's help to be set free. One of the interesting things that came out of this is that we began to realize that when the big book talked about lack of power being our dilemma back there in the fourth step, that didn't mean simply lack of power over alcohol, serious and complicated as that is. but it clearly meant that we had lack of power over our thinking. And now we already know that we are powerless over ourselves, over selfishness and self-centeredness and self-centered fear and self-doubt, self-pity. Just exactly as we're powerless over alcohol. A little later, we're going to find out the same powerlessness applies to our resentments, that we could not wish them away any more than we could alcohol. Now, this is critical knowledge for us, because what it's doing is leading us directly to the purpose, the end purpose and the end result of working the rest of the steps. That by the time we reach the 10th step, we will have been set free. We will have entered the world of the Spirit. We will have become God conscious. We will have been restored to sanity. Now that's all in front of us here, and yet we can see that all of these things tie together, and it starts right here in the 3rd step. And so in this commitment that we make to go forward with the rest of the steps, we do this because we realize that we have a part to play here. It is not enough for me to simply consign myself to God and then sit back and say, okay, buddy, go ahead and take care of it all. I'm just going to sit around and see what you do to me. Because it doesn't work that way. The partnership that we form with God requires of us that we do certain things, and then God does what He promises. And then we do what we are supposed to do, and then God does what He promises. And this goes on and on and on the rest of our lives. It's a simple concept. It isn't what we would like it to be, I suppose. It would be awfully nice if we could simply do this stuff one time, be all fixed up, and from there on we'd be living a spiritual way of life, no sweat. It would all happen. But no, the work that we must do stays with us for the rest of our lives. Continues for a lifetime, the big book says. And so we've reached the point now in our step work where we have made the decision to turn our life and will over to the care of God as we understand Him. We have utilized a prayer, which is the way that we go about commencing this process, and in effect formalizing this relationship. We have committed ourselves in this process to going forward with the rest of the steps, to doing whatever we could do so that God would be enabled to take away our difficulties, so that we would then become an example for those we wanted to help. And we looked a little bit ahead, and we found out that our real purpose for being here anyway was to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to Him and to our fellows. And this is all part of that process. In the next paragraph, at the bottom of page 63, we found that this must all be done without reservation. We're not holding anything back here now. We're not saying, yeah, you can have my life and my will except for these specific items, which I think I'll reserve to myself because I'm not sure you know exactly what I want to do here. Most commonly, we'd like to reserve our sex lives. That's probably the one most dangerous one for us to try to handle ourselves. We've already proven that we know absolutely nothing about doing that, except how to screw it up. And then it goes on to say at the bottom of page 63, 5 lines up in the bottom, this was only a beginning. Though if honestly and humbly made, an effect sometimes a very great one was felt at once. And many people do have that reaction to the 3rd step. Sort of a psychic sigh of relief, I think you might call it. Finally, I made a decision to do something which doesn't require that I be hanging out there twisting slowly in the wind, which is what's been going on up till now. The bottom of page 63, that little partial paragraph, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Now remember, when we read this, guys, what we're reading here. It says we and us. This is referring obviously to the people who came before us, those first 100, those folks who were there, whose input became this book, whose experiences in working the steps and working the program became this book. Go back to the basic fact. Forward to the first edition, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this volume. So when we read this, we're not reading something that is a philosophical concept. Goodbye. Boy, she didn't like that. She wanted to share, I guess. We didn't tell her we share any time we want. We've been happy to have her get her hand up. Okay. What we're talking about here then is a recitation of what they did. We always have to remember that as we read this book. And so, this is a house cleaning which many of us had never attempted. We're top of page 64 now. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Such an important sentence, so often overlooked. I think we talked about this last week, but and maybe we've done it several times, I don't know, but it seems that we need to constantly remind ourselves what's going on here. The third step and the third step prayer are not the answer to surrender. It is where surrender starts. And this is telling us that unless we go ahead and get cleared up the things that block us from God, what good was the decision that we made to surrender? You see, so that's why it tells us it could have little permanent effect. It's not, the effect of the third step cannot be lasting unless we go forward from that point. It's just a starting point. The two words "at once" in the third line, we ought to burn those into our foreheads. It means exactly what it says. We've done the third step and we at once go to the fourth step. This is not the kind of thing that we can justify sitting around and waiting for months and months to get started. Although sometimes that's the advice we're given, and sometimes that's what we would like to do, because maybe we're a little bit afraid of the fourth step, or maybe we're a little afraid of the fifth step. But nevertheless, regardless of whatever fears we might have, and regardless of what we may feel in terms of our lack of memory or any of the other excuses that we have, we still need to go immediately to our inventory. Okay, because our liquor was but a symptom, it tells us, and we had to get down to causes and conditions. The word there is "had to," and it means exactly what it says. Without doing that, we don't recover. It's that simple. Now, before we get into any further text on this, let's talk about the fourth step and what it is and what it is not. First of all, the fourth step in the big book is very precise. It is not a broadsword, it is a rapier. It goes directly to certain specific points. Those specific points are the defects of character which we must be freed from, and the guilt and remorse and shame which have built up due to our actions. The questions which must be answered are questions posed in the big book, not questions which have been cobbled together by people on the outside. The fourth step is not amenable to being utilized as a form to fill in the blanks or make check marks. I saw one yesterday, and a lady brought it to me and she was in distress. She said, "What's wrong here? I've done this, and I don't know anything more than when I started." And I picked it up, and it was, gee, it was like this. It was beautiful stuff. And over here with names and a couple of little generic terms put in there. And over here there are about 5 or 6 boxes, all with check marks in them. Then there was some more stuff over here, and then a bunch of more check marks. I said, "What is this?" She said, "It's my 4th step." I said, "No, it's not." I know I'm going to have a sponsor really mad at me now. But I can't help that. It's not a 4th step. What am I going to tell her? "Oh, that's okay. Sure, go right ahead. This is wonderful. You can do a 5th step from this." You can't. You can't. It doesn't even become close to giving us the information we need for a 5th step. In any event, the 4th step is not an autobiography, even though some think it is. The 4th step is not amenable to 697 questions. We talked about that before. I've seen that one out there. I think that comes from another fellowship, but it is now like a virus infecting AA. I figure it'll take you about 6 months of diligent effort to answer all those questions longhand. Yes?
I saw it on the internet the other day. It's a California 4-step.
California 4-step?
And it's like 400 and something questions.
Oh man, why do they name it California? That's a heresy. Can you imagine what some of those old boys out there would do if they knew that? They're Dr. Paul and Chuck C. and Father Joe and all of those guys? Man. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that's floating around. And you see, what's the false premise here? The false premise is the same thing that the chapter 3 took so much pains to explain to us, that self-knowledge would keep us sober. And that's not true. And this has not been true since the days of Roland Hazard, when he found that out with a whole year with Dr. Young. It just is not true. We don't stay sober on self-knowledge. We don't stay sober on the basis of any human solution. If we did, there'd be no need for AA. What the heck would we be doing here? Why would we need the 12 spiritual steps? If the human solution was sufficient, it's not. Never has been. I dare say never will be. So now what is the 4th step? That's, I guess, the crux of the question, isn't it? The 4th step is a search for the truth about ourselves and our present reality in very specific areas. We need to find out what our defects of character are. And there are 4. When you look at the 4th step, and when you look at the questions which are asked, when you look at the sum total of the results of the 4 different parts of the 4th step, you will find that there are 4 defects. Resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. Wait a minute. Where's all the sin? There isn't any sin in the big book. We're not dealing here with sin. We're dealing with natural God-given instincts warped and perverted by fear. Resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. Why is that all that's necessary? Because those 4 defects encompass everything else that goes wrong with us. And especially a whole host of personality traits and habits that we will uncover as we do our 4th step that we don't like. But all of them relate back to fear. Now we know that the 4th step encompasses these 4 defects because not only is it preparing us right now to understand what our present reality is and what it is about ourselves that we can't fix and what is tearing us apart, that we're going to have to be free of and that only God can free us from. Not only is it doing that for us, but it's preparing us for a lifetime of inventorying. And we are going to be inventorying in the 10th step, what? Resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. And then we're going to be inventorying in the 11th step, what? Resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. Those 4. So the 4th step starts us out with these, teaches us how to find them, how to recognize them, how to write them down, how to acknowledge them, how to admit them, and then ultimately how to be free from them. And when we get to the 10th step, then we have this tool already fully formed, and we've used it, and now we know how to use it, and we know if we use it, it works. And for the rest of our lives, we get to inventory, resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. And when these crop up, we get to ask God at once to take them away, which is our 7th step. We talk to somebody about them immediately, which is our 5th step. If we've harmed anybody, we make amends quickly, which is our 9th step. And then we've already learned that what we must do is immediately turn our thoughts to someone we can help, which is our 12th step. That's our 10th step. And what it's done is it's taken all these things that we're learning now from 4 through 9, putting them in one step and saying, okay, as you go through the day, you need to do this every time something comes up. And why do we need a 10th step? Because all of our defects are triggered, and the progenitor of each and every one of them is fear, and the world and all of its people will continue to threaten us as we go through life, and fear will crop up, and fear will engender anger and hatred and resentment and dishonesty and selfishness, and we need to know how to be free from this right on the spot, not allowing these things to grow in us and fester and knock us down, because they will. They block us from God, and that's the one thing we cannot stand. We have to do whatever we have to do each day to stay free, so that we are free of the things which block us, so we can stay in the world of the Spirit, so we can stay God conscious. That's our job. When we do that, we stay in God's pocket, we're always in safe territory. How does the 4th step accomplish these things? First of all, we have to understand the 4th step is broken down into 4 distinct parts. They all interconnect in one way or another, but each of them is designed to elicit our knowledge of one or more of our defects of character. And they go right to the point. The first of these 4 parts of the 4th step is a resentment list. And when we do our resentment list, we're going to find out whom we resent and why we resent them, and what the actions, the wrongs that they did to us, how it affected us. We get to write all this down. And we get to see that in each and every instance of a resentment, there was a fear involved, because we're going to find out that fear underlies every anger, every resentment, every rage. There's always a fear back there somewhere, and we find that as we do our 4-step resentment list. Now, if it were only a matter of finding these things, that would be very important, but the big book goes much further. After we have found these resentments, before we do anything else, we're going to use a spiritual remedy to be freed from them. And that remedy's right in the big book. As a matter of fact, and this is important to remember, Bill Wilson was asked one time, how do I know if I did a proper 4-step? And he said, if you have any resentments left when you finish it, you didn't do it right. Because the 4-step incorporates within it the complete spiritual remedy to our resentments. We don't move on to the second part of the 4th step until we have utilized that remedy. The second part of the 4th step then is where we go back and check out our wrongs. We look to see whom we've harmed, and we begin the process of becoming willing to make amends, to set matters straight. In other words, in the second part of the 4th step, we begin the process of the 8th step, because we're going to have our 8th step done by the time we finish our 4th step, at least most of it. What else are we going to do in the second part? When we're looking at our wrongs, we're going to be looking at our dishonesty, our selfishness, and our fear. So over here in the first part we have resentments. Now we have dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. The first and second parts of the fourth step. The second part of the fourth step, we will discover when we begin to read it, is separate and apart from and not compared with the first part. We don't compare our fault to theirs or theirs to ours. Two different subject matters. Because in the case of those who have harmed us, our purpose is to identify and be free of the resentments. In the case of our faults and our wrongs and the people we've harmed, our aim there is to identify our dishonesty and selfishness and fear, and also to find out whom we've harmed and who we're going to have to make amends to. See, two different purposes. There is no comparative fault in the big book. One stands alone from the other. The forms that are out there have these things all mishmashed together so that you can't tell anything from anything. And I think the theory is that if I find out that she was so bad to me, and I really want to hate her for it, and then over here I got to find out I was so bad to her, that somehow these things meet in the middle and cancel each other out. So therefore, since I figured all that out, obviously this is the key. I shouldn't hate her. I shouldn't. Well, what about if I still do? What about if all of this stuff, which is supposed to teach me that these resentments are wrong because I had a part, didn't work? Suppose the resentments are still there. Are they not still a cancer? Are they not still tearing me apart? Do they not still block me from God? Yes. Do I still need to learn how to be free from them? Most assuredly. Does that form that's handed out, that comes out of that wonderful duo of Joe and Charlie, does that form teach me how to be rid of those resentments? Hell no. What it does is assume that because I have taken these things and compared the fault, that this solves the problem. Obviously it doesn't. The problem is the spiritual one, guys. Always. That's what we're here for. Our spiritual bankruptcy. And only God can take away that selfishness and self-centeredness. Only God can take away those resentments. We're as powerless over them as we are over alcohol. Our job is to find them and admit them, and then to turn them over to God. And this whole business of comparing fault is a blind alley, and it's a sucker's paradise, and it doesn't work. Now then there's a third part of the fourth step. This is the fears list. We've already seen fear in the first part, fear in the second part. Now we come to the third part, and now we're going to take these fears all by themselves and go right down that list of fears. And we're going to check them out, and we're going to find out why we have them. And then we're going to begin the process of being freed from fear. And if we do that right at once, we commence to outgrow fear. This is all the way back here in the fourth step now. You can see how this fourth step is so critical in so many ways. And then finally, the fourth part of the fourth step is our sex inventory. The purpose of the sex inventory is specifically to highlight our dishonesty and especially our selfishness, and to show us why our relationships have failed in the past. It also is designed for us to identify the harm that we've done others so that we can now add to our 8-step list. One more thing it's designed to do. It's designed to parade the horribles for us so that we can really see what's been going on with us in our relationship life all these years, which means that when we get all through with this, we can see clearly what didn't work. And now we have to be willing to do what will work. This is going to go on the rest of our lives. Quit doing the stuff that doesn't work. Start doing the things that will work. Our whole life changes. So we are able then, with God's help, to craft an ideal for our future sex life and relationship life. And this is an ideal just for us. It doesn't mean him or her out there. It means just us, how we are to be. And then we're going to work toward that, and we're going to ask God for help with that. And by the time then we have finished these 4 parts, look what we have. The 5 results of a properly done 4-step. 1, we lose our resentments. 2, we commence to lose our fears. 3, we have an ideal for our future relationship life. 4, we have a list of all people we've harmed and have become willing to make amends to them all. 5, we have a list of all of our defects of character, which we're now going to carry forward into our 5th step. And you see, if we didn't do that 4-step right, what in the world are we going to do with a 5th step? So each step builds on the ones that follow and builds from the ones that came before it. And we can't, if we break that chain anywhere along the line, the rest of it collapses. Yes.
Will you say those again, please?
I couldn't.
Will you say those 5 things again?
Yes. A properly done 4-step. We're going to lose our resentments. We're going to commence to lose our fears. We're going to have an ideal for our future relationship life. We're going to have our 8-step list completed, or nearly so. And we're going to have a list of our defects of character. Yes, ma'am.
The third one was, what about future relationship?
The what?
The third one. Deal.
The big book tells us that as soon as we finished our sex inventory, we look to see what it is that has failed us in the past in our relationships, and we go to God and ask Him to help us to craft an ideal for our future relationship life, our future sex life, and He does. And we write it out, and that becomes the ideal which we work toward from there on. It's very important for us to remember that this 4-step and the 5th step are not designed for us for it to be an indictment of us. They are designed for us to be able to find out what our present reality is, what it is that needs to be taken care of, needs to be changed, needs to be fixed, that we can't do ourselves. Those things over which we are powerless, especially our defects of character and our guilts. That's the reason we're going to do a 4-step. That's the reason we do a 5th step. It's not designed to make us bad or to make anybody bad. When we write our resentment list and we talk about and write about the things that other people have done to us, it's not to indict them or make them bad. It's simply so that we can find out what it is they did that we're going to have to be willing to forgive, because it is in that forgiveness that we are set free. With that in mind, then, let's start here the first full paragraph on page 64, which commences, therefore. Therefore, we start on a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. And of course, when we read that, we can extrapolate from that directly into ourselves and in our fact-finding process to discover the truth about ourselves. What is it about us that doesn't work? What is it that we have been doing that didn't work? What about our attitudes and our outlooks upon life? What about our actions? What about the damage which has been done to us psychically and mentally? What about the damage which has been done to us physically? Especially, what about the damage which has been done to us spiritually? And how do we get rid of those things, and how do we commence the process of reconstruction? If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. And therefore, we're looking at a process here which requires of us that we be dead honest with ourselves and we be thorough. Remember, going all the way back into the first step and into the beginning of chapter 5, that there is a bottom line here, which is self-honesty. If we're not capable or willing to be honest with ourselves, we don't recover. So it goes on to tell us this: we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. Well, now, the first manifestation of self, which is going to be considered here and which constitutes the first part of the fourth step, is resentment. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. This is fundamental stuff, guys. It's something which it can be very harsh medicine if we're not willing to accept it, don't want to accept it. It goes against what we've been taught or what we've always considered to be true about ourselves. Many of us have thought that we were highly spiritual people, really religious, and churchgoers and deacons and all these things. And here the book is saying, but wait a second, you think maybe you're only mentally and physically ill, but no, you're also spiritually sick. Because it is that spiritual illness which is the root of our trouble. That's where it all goes to. And so the next sentence is a absolutely powerful sentence, and sometimes I think we slip right by it, or we may dismiss it as being not true. How could this be true? When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. That's the truth. That is the literal truth. I remember years and years ago, there was a group of men, 7 of them, all of whom were AIDS victims. They'd gone past, they were in active AIDS. And they asked me to work the steps with them, which I did. We had a kind of a little group, and we worked them pretty much together. That was years and years ago. Out of those 7, 6 of them went into full remission. And one, Billy, died. I remember the day before he died, he came over to South Beach, Sober on South Beach meeting. And it was upstairs at that time on Washington Street. And he was pretty sick, but he walked up those stairs, and he sat in the meeting with a big smile on his face. And he shared with everybody how he had been granted all these great gifts, how God had smiled on him. And the next day he was gone. And as far as I know, the other 6 are still alive, and they're still in remission. Now, nobody can figure it out. This isn't supposed to happen. So if you can, please don't wonder why I am passionate about this stuff. I see these results, and I know they're true, and therefore I can have no doubt whatsoever the power that God can exercise in our lives if we are willing to allow Him to do it. And I think it's such a terrible shame that we sometimes listen to people who want us to put limitations on God's power. Even sometimes to laugh about it. Say, oh, he's got a sense of humor, and He doesn't take away all our defects, and He makes us work on those the rest of our lives. And every time we do that, what are we doing? We're saying, God, your power is not, you're not omnipotent. Or even if you are, you don't wish to exercise it. Or even worse, how can I trust you? And all that means is if God won't do it, I'm going to have to do it for myself. And where does that lead us? Right back into the sinkhole again, doesn't it? So when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, now here we go. This is the way we do our resentments. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Let's talk about institutions or principles, because this is something which is not defined, but it's relatively simple. Institutions would be, of course, human institutions. Could be churches, could be schools, could be the IRS, could be cops, could be courts, whatever the institution is that has caused you pain, threatened you, maybe incarcerated you, or you have a feeling of anger toward them. The principles that we're talking about here are things that we were taught that were supposed to be the way we had to live our lives, which we found out were false, or we believed they were false, and that they led to bad results, and so therefore we resent the things that we were taught. You won't find that cropping up very often, but once in a while it'll be there. Generally speaking, most of the four-step resentment list is going to be composed of people. We ask ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relations, including sex, were hurt or threatened, so we were sore, we were burned up. In other words, please see what this is saying. This resentment list only goes to the question of you and me with respect to how we were hurt, what happened to us because of what was done to us. Not one word about what we did to them. Please. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which have been interfered with? Those basically cover our natural God-given instincts. Let's go back so we be sure we understand what we're dealing with here. Natural God-given instincts for sex, security, and society. And right here we find various aspects of those natural instincts which have been interfered with or injured by the actions and the wrongs of others, and we list those over on the right-hand column. In the middle, we're going to write down exactly what they did in narrative form. We don't use generic descriptions. It is not enough to write down Mr. Brown, the cause he's manipulative. Oh? But what did he do? How did he hurt you? What's going on here? All right. Now then, we have to pause right here and consider what's going on. It is very unlikely that at first we're going to have in mind everyone who has harmed us and everyone for whom we hold a resentment. I suppose there are a few individuals who have that whole list very firmly in mind, but for most of us it is not so. The reason is simple. If we go back into our lives and we begin to examine the people with whom we've had significant contact, we're going to find that many of them have harmed us back there, and yet we're not aware of any resentment that's still floating around. And so we would like to ignore them, because if we put them down, it means a lot more writing we have to do and most of us are a little bit lazy anyway, so we're going to try to take the easier, softer way. No, 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 we mustn't do that. These resentments hide out in dark corners of our minds. Think of the resentments that are there because it's been necessary for us to swallow the harm that was being done to us by people upon whom we were dependent. If I'm going to have to accept that this person upon whom I depend is untrustworthy or is violent or harms me or is dishonest and so on, how can I continue to depend upon them? I've got to find some way to rationalize that away. Or if they're being harmful to me, say they're beating on me, I've got to take that upon myself and say it must have been my fault. In order for me to continue my dependence, it's too painful for me to acknowledge just how wrong they have been. Yes?
Would you like to quote on the fact of the born people pleasers and the doormats and the passive aggressives? Because I find as being a doormat and a people pleaser, I let them do it to me.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways of appeasing the people in our lives and trying to survive some way. And especially, you bring up a good point, because one of the things that's happened to us in our childhood, we really begin to feel our powerlessness, don't we? Because parents and the grandparents and the older brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, everybody bigger than us has the power, and we don't have any, but it scares us. We're not aware of this necessarily, but we begin to find ways to assert ourselves, to try to find some power. Sometimes kids become brats, they become rebellious. Other times they become goody two-shoes and super students or super athletes or anything that will do to pacify and to get the parents to believing that they are something, that they have some identity of their own, some power of their own, something that can be wielded. And this will last. It'll go right on into adulthood. We learn as children, and we continue to learn as we go through life, that there are certain things which will work, and we'll use those. Passive-aggressive, gentlemen suggested, or being a doormat. It's amazing what we find. When you're doing a lot of 12-step work and sponsorship, you're going to find every permutation, every combination you can imagine of all of these things. But it always goes back to one thing, doesn't it? That here is a spirit which is tied up in the ropes and chains of self and is blasted by fear. And a spirit which is trying to deal with natural instincts which have been completely set awry. They no longer work for us. They work against us. And all of this relates back, of course, to the fact that fear has simply destroyed us. Yes, sir?
Yes, I have a question. When you're doing your resentments and you're doing the causes, what about you have resentment against people, but they really didn't harm you? It's just maybe an expectation that they didn't feel, would you still, but they actually physically or emotionally, they really didn't harm you, but you still have a resentment against them. Would you list that on your resentments?
Sure. But maybe they offended you just by living. Maybe you were offended by the space that they filled that you wanted to fill, or the prestige which they enjoyed which you wanted to enjoy. There are all kinds of different permutations there too, but if there's a resentment, by goodness, you better look at it, find out, because you see, ultimately, when you get back to it, you'll find a fear is involved. Ultimately, there will always be a fear involved. And we have to ask ourselves, and what is the threat here? This person didn't do anything to me personally, so why do I resent them? I have to first look at the space they occupy. I have to look at the niche in life, which might be mine. I may have to look at them as a threat from a societal standpoint. perhaps a different religion or a different color or a different ethnic group, a different economic group. There are all kinds of things that our minds are all screwed up anyway. So, but it's important for us to make an effort, a real strong effort, to find out why that resentment is there. Yes.
Jim, I worked in I'm retired now, but I worked in corporate America for many years. And we had these management courses, which was brutal. It was the carrot and the stick that would be applied toward subordinates in the most cruelest form. And it's not easy for someone who is in AA and trying to work these various things and be stuck at work in that atmosphere. I found it very, very difficult to deal with that many years.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons I kept on looking forward to my retirement. Thinking back in retrospect, it was a very, very sick atmosphere. And that permeates through corporate America. It was terrible. But I had ways of dealing with it. I used to go to a meeting, lunchtime, the mustard scene on 37th Street. That would be a haven for me to snap me back into proper thinking. And I put it into action for the people that worked under me. And it was amazing the extra work I got out of them by being forthright with the individuals that worked under me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about it brings me back, I think, about resentments, about people, when I was promoted, the resentments people had toward me because I was promoted. It was unbelievable. People that I was very good friends with within the company for many years looked at me with a joint side. So that's what my experience with resentments is. The cruelty out there was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Thanks very much. Do you have a question?
My name is Tyrone, an alcoholic.
Tyrone?
About 90 and 80 something, 80 in the latter part of 80s and 80s. My mother was in this relationship, and we was all out to dinner at the pizzeria, and my sister was acting up, and the boyfriend smacks my sister, and then my mother tried, was saying something to him, and then he smacked my mother, and I was full of fear. I was like, I wanted to get even with him. So we get home, and I already got the screwdriver in my pocket because I'm gonna stab him. And then he starts banging on the window, telling me to get out the car, get out the car. And I was fear-based, and I stayed in the car because I knew what would happen if I would have got out. I would have got beat down. So, do I include that on my fourth step? Because I included the last fourth step I did, but I still.
Why are you doing another four step?
Huh?
Why are you doing another four step?
Because I'm working with a new sponsor now,
Oh.
and I'm going through the steps again so he can get to know me, get to know my past and all of that.
Oh.
So he's.
Well, okay. Whatever, if you're going to do another four step, then you need to put down every resentment you have, don't you? Why would you leave anything out?
Right.
Now there's one clear-cut exception, and it comes right at the head of the list here. It says, "I am resentful at."
Okay.
If the resentment's gone, you don't have to put it down again, do you?
Oh, okay. Resentment is gone.
Well, what happened to that resentment? You kill a guy finally, or what?
No, he's up in New York. But I did see him in the past, 4 years ago, and he's doing real well. He's with another woman, and he's he was in active addiction. Him and my mother and me.
All right.
So
you figure you shouldn't have a resentment, huh?
well,
I would suggest that you not count on that and that you do a little praying for this guy.
Okay.
Set yourself free.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, now here's what we're going to do. We want to make sure we don't miss anybody, because it is absolutely so that these resentments are cancerous. They eat us alive. They block us from the sunlight of the Spirit. So let's do this. Let's make a list of all the people who have been important in our lives, significant people, beginning way back there in our childhood. Our families, our extended families, and of course bringing it forward to teachers and friends and employers and boyfriends, girlfriends. And then if we've been involved in other kinds of things like clubs or societies, professors, maybe cops, maybe judges, maybe jailers, whoever has played a major part in our lives, we're going to put their name down. Now, in order to see what happens here is by doing this, we get a chance to really begin a process of ego jogging, especially if we're fairly new. Our ego, I didn't mean ego. Gee whiz, senior moment. Memory jogging, which is just what I need. We want to jog our memories, and it's a great way to do it, to go back and start examining our past and writing down the names of people who have been important. Once we get that list down, then it's relatively easy for us to determine which of those folks have harmed us and caused us resentment. And we ask ourselves a series of questions about each of them. And if we answer yes to any of those questions, then we know that somebody we're going to have to write about. Let's take an example. Let's say we've got our list now of people who have been important in our lives. Did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. People have been important in our lives. Now let's take the question. Let's say that the first person on our list is Papa. The first question we're going to ask ourselves then, did Papa harm me in any way? The next question is going to be, did Papa wrong me in any way? And then we ask ourselves, did Papa anger me in any way? And then we ask ourselves, did Papa threaten me in any way? And then finally we ask ourselves, was Papa unfair to me? You say, well, wait a second, why the unfair? Well, because a lot of times we have great difficulty in acknowledging any of the first four because they are pejoratives in a sense. They're making Papa bad or wrong, and we don't want to do that. We don't have any real difficulty in acknowledging the fact that he was unfair to us. And that unfairness, we will find, will underlie a resentment just as surely as a more physical wrong. Because unfairness goes directly to our sense of self. Goes direct. It's a direct threat to us, because, when people are unfair, we don't have anything to say about it. Man, we feel so powerless, and powerlessness is a really important part of these resentments. This feeling of powerlessness. Do you ever stop to think how you feel when somebody accuses you of something you know you didn't do, but you can't prove you didn't do it? Can't prove the negative? Man, is that frustrating. You feel so powerless and you want to strike out. I'm sure you've all experienced that. So now what happens here, let's say that we answer these questions and we find that Papa threatened us and Papa angered us, okay? So now when we come to our resentment list on page 65, it's simple. What we're going to do in the center column, in the left-hand column, we're going to write down Papa. In the center column, we're going to write down what Papa did that threatened us and made us angry. We're going to put down what he did. We're going to write down his actions. What was it that he did? Then over in the right-hand column, we're going to look to see what was threatened, what was impaired, what was harmed in us by his actions? Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal relations, or our sex relations? And so we write that down in our right-hand column. And always, always we will find that there was a fear involved. And so that goes there too. That takes care of Papa for right now. We're going to have to come back to him because we're going to want to be free of the resentment that is still lurking around the edges there, or maybe a very active resentment. Not all resentments are out there where you can see them. Most of them are hiding out pretty good. And then so each of the people on our significant person list, we're going to go through and answer those questions the same way. This way, hopefully, we're not going to miss anybody. And we're going to err on the side of caution. We're going to say, okay, there may not be an active resentment here, but I'm not sure. Let's write about it anyway. Usually when you start writing about it, you're going to be able to tell whether there is in fact resentment, because it'll start to feel that way. You begin to feel the anger. Because if we write and get this stuff out of our heads and down on paper, that's when things start to get clear to us. Now that's the way we're going to do our 4-step resentment list. We're going to go right on through with all the people on our list where we've answered yes to any one of those questions. In those rare exceptions, if we can absolutely say there's no resentment left. I may have had one at one time, but I do not have one now. And down at the bottom of page 65, we'll continue now. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Now, we can look at that, and the first thing we want to do, of course, is to relate this to ourselves and to our own experience. Looking back, we see that many people have wronged us. Bill uses the word 5 times on this page, which is very unusual for him because he usually would find a synonym wherever he could. He uses the word wrong 3 times in the top 3 sentences on this page. So let's get the message here. What we're talking about is the wrongs that others have done us. And then it talks about this business of wanting to get even. We tried and fought to have our own way. We tried to win. We wanted to win. We were forced. One of the things that we're going to find is doing our inventory is that one of our basic characteristics is that we tried to force things to happen in accordance with our desires and our wishes. We would sometimes go to extremes in order to see to it that things happen the way we wanted to make them happen. We'll find a lot of this when we get into our relationships and our sex inventory. We'll find that we really tried to force stuff to happen. And we do it in business, we do it in our family relationships. Somebody would cross us, we would want revenge, we would want to get even. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. We begin to get a pattern here as we do this, guys. We begin to see that so much of what we were taught as children and as teenagers growing up was wrong. Now, a lot of the stuff was lies. And the people who taught us did not necessarily recognize that this was untrue. But their teaching was that in order for us to be secure and serene and happy, that we were going to have that education. We're going to have that career. we're going to have lots of money and accumulate lots of things. And we're going to have to learn how to manipulate and capture people in our castle and get them to do what we wanted. We were going to have to learn how to influence people, and we were going to have to learn all kinds of human dynamics in order to get ahead. And the idea here was that if we did all these things, we'd be just fine. We would be secure and we'd be happy. And it was exactly the opposite of what in fact happened, because even though we set out in our own way to do these things, and even though we were able to accomplish a great deal, some of us, we never did feel a sense of security and happiness. As a matter of fact, what really happened was that the more successful we became in accomplishing these things, the higher we built our castle, the more we took people captive in our castle, the greater our fears became. And our fears were fears of losing what we had. We would struggle mightily not to do that. And fears of not getting what else we needed or thought we needed or had to have or wanted. We began to be afraid of failure and afraid of economic insecurity and afraid of rejection, afraid of being found out for the things that we've done, afraid of being punished, all kinds of fears. And it was these fears that warped us. It was these fears that created the pain in our lives. Fear and anxiety, and of course that almost always leads to depression, leads to anger and resentment and all kinds of aggressiveness. And you can look back and you can trace all this stuff as it begins to accumulate in your life. So that didn't work. Nobody told us that the way to gain happiness and security in life was to surrender to a higher power. Or maybe they told us, but it never sunk in. Most of the time, we're on a totally false trail. And here, when we suddenly begin to realize that that's what happened to us, we're going to see that we're going to have to make some radical changes in our lives. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life needs to change. And it will, of course. That's one of the things that happens as we reach a spiritual awakening. Anyway, next week we're going to come back to this, and here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be finding a spiritual solution to these resentments. And we're going to be examining what that is and how it works. And then we'll probably also get a chance to look at the second part of the fourth step, which is where we make a list of our own wrongs. I want to thank all of you for letting me share this today. And who'd like to do the chips today, please? Come on up, dear.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Here,
Thank you.
in AA, we have a chip system, which, do you have a cheat sheet? Which denotes the lengths of sobriety. A white chip is to surrender for today. Does anybody would like to come up and take a white chip? Blue for 30.
I don't know. We got any 3-month chips here, guys? Or no, 1-month chip. No 1-month chips. Okay, that'll be 3 months, and that's 6.
But there's no 9 months.
No, that's 3 months right there.
There's no other colored chips. Oh, this is 6, and then this is 9.
90 days is 9.
No, that red one is the 90-day chip.
This
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
90-day. Okay. So, okay. This is for 90 days of continuous sobriety. Would anyone like to come and take this? Okay, leave it
And then
here
there's
if you're
one for
shy.
6 months.
And then blue is for 6 months. Does anyone have 6 months of continuous sobriety? No. Okay, we'll leave it here. And if you're celebrating, put your name on the board. And I believe we have cake and a
Oh, yes.
coin
Next week.
for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Let me tell what I'm alcoholic. Just made mention that I'm going to get another. This one is from my home group in the morning, but there's for like coffee and things like that. For coffee, donations for coffee and stuff. be a can of something to, you know, anybody, you know, would like to, it's up to you, you know, that is for like coffee and things like that, you know, for, and we do have maybe a little area to put the coffee and stuff, but like, I know this meeting is only like once a week, but that's just to let you know, okay?
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Tyrone. Any other announcements? Okay, let's close the meeting.
Oh, sorry, and I guess the rest to help out with the rent. Something like that.
Now, the rest of it goes to the speaker. But don't tell anybody that. Let this circle represent the unity of our fellowship. Let's have a moment of silence for those who are still suffering, and we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. Thank you. Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Keep coming back for mercy of your okay.
Hey, sweetie. Did you? How'd it feel? Oops. And please be back in your seats in 10 minutes. Hey, babe.
She got lost.
Huh?
She got lost.
Oh, my goodness sakes alive.
I have to ask you. I know you're not going to be around till Wednesday. Now, what I did was have my. Am I harassing you? Okay. I have my.
Oh, there, sweetie pie.
How you doing?
Everything's good. How you feeling?
Good.
It's so good to see you.
These, my prep work. I've highlighted those people who've affected me in some negative way.
Okay, and what you got more here?
Yeah. Now, I know that this, I'm rewriting. How do I rewrite?
Huh?
How do I rewrite?
Do what?
Do I make columns?
Yeah, just like it is here, darling. There's no difference. You just do it this way.
Okay, I write the name.
I'm resentful at the cause and effect story, and here's what you look
But
for.
what if I have I'm resentful at this son of a bitch, and I have all these things? I have to list them separately, no? Like that? Except some that are generic, like.
Well, all you need to do is put a name down once, then you can write. There's no. See, this is your list now. You might have him for 2 pages before you have the next one.
Right.
You don't have to keep writing his
name.
name.
Then write the resentment.
Everything he did to you.
What if I have no room for effectsima on that same page?
Well, then you make a little
Or do I
separate
make
page.
columns?
Make column.
You-
I'll show you mine tomorrow, okay? I'll bring it in.
You can have a little separate page. It doesn't matter as long as you get it down. This is just for convenience sake.
Now, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to write him, why, and what it affected me. And at
Yeah,
that point,
but you just
I
write
stop.
it out like this. You don't
Right,
put check
right,
marks.
right. And then I stop, right?
Do we make red?
I don't know yet.
Oh. Did you need to make an announcement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then I stop and I pray. And I look over the list and I.
That would be
I
great.
phrase-
You do it that way. That ought to work great.
No?
Yeah.
I pray for all of these people and I
You
see
pray
them
for them as you go along, and it'll be great.
I can do that?
Sure you can. Of course you can.
Okay, and then I wait for you to help me with the rest.
Well, honey, you get some of this stuff written down, and then I want to see what you're doing. But you just do as much as you can, and every time you get one of them done, when you get that done, pray for them. Go to the next one, pray for them.
And what if I still have the resentment?
Doesn't matter. You just keep praying for them until it goes. It will go. See, you can't hate somebody and pray for them at the same time. It's impossible. Sometimes it takes a while. You have to be willing to.
I feel like I have a lot of anger and hatred inside.
Sure you do. But remember what it's doing to you. When you continue with that hatred, they win. You lose. You're not hurting them any with your hatred.
But then as I do the column with, okay, I write his name, and then I'll make a column for a list of why I'm resentful, so I have room for what it affects.
That would be better, but you don't. You can make that on a separate sheet if you want to.
But then what about my faults? Or what did I do?
It goes on a totally different page.
Forget
A
it.
totally different page.
You don't
We're not
need to
even
leave
gonna-
room
don't-
for that.
I don't even want you to think about it.
Like this. Give me your pen. Give me this.
Here, look at this. I know
Give me a
this
blank
isn't-
something that doesn't have
Write it on the back.
Look, I did it like this. Like, here's my paper. I go like this. Like this. Like this. Person. Cause. Effect. Then be. And you write. Because he boom boom boom, and you write.
What if there's like
and then you just write whatever here.
3 pages of
So then
resentments
you
for him?
write
That's okay.
3 pages. worth.
Whatever it is.
But then affects do I have to
You don't
separate
write
that for
this
each
doesn't have to be.
individual?
This doesn't have to be 3
One
pages.
time.
This
That's all
is
you gotta
one
do.
thing. This will be the personal sexual.
Yes, I do, but we take a couple minutes.
This is going to be. I'm telling you what this will be. This is going to be personal, sexual, ambition,
It's everything. He affected
whatever.
me.
But you only write that once.
All you need to do is use this these things right up here. Self-esteem, security, ambition,
Esteem
personal
and
relationships.
security.
If I have 60
You write this
people
once.
that I still write out.
You
how
write
can
this
I
once,
pay?
and you can write this as long as you want. But just keep it within these. So you just keep these little columns. It's not a big deal.
Do I pray for each individual, or do I
It
pray
doesn't have to look
generically?
perfect.
Well, here's what I'd like you to do. I would like for you to take first shot at all the ones that have hurt you the most. Let's get them out of the way first.
Like your
Okay.
mom, your dad.
And pray for them as you go. And then after you get all those done, then we can go look back and see what comes next. You let yourself get overwhelmed here.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, take 15, 20 minutes every day. That's all you got to do.
Okay.
I know you can work 15 minutes on this a day, right?
I want to get well.
Well, I know, but here's the point. If you know you only have to work 15
Then
minutes,
it's not
you'll do it.
Yeah.
If you want to work more, fine. But all you got to do is put in 15
You know what?
minutes.
I did this at work sometimes, like my old job. I did it at work at times.
I can do it at work too.
Right, exactly. It's done.
How much are we short, sir?
Thank
much?
you so much.
Okay, darling.
And oh, that's yours.
Yeah, don't you dare walk off.
Here, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I need to change it because I only have a big bill.
You'll be back on Wednesday, right?
Yeah. Don't worry about it. We'll get this done. 15 minutes a day.
No, I'm still sitting with you. I'm not going yet. Here, if you give me change.
How much are we short, sir?
$6 back.
I won't have to bother you later.
Well, why don't we just do that right now?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a word from Sarah, our secretary. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, your secretary. Hi, Sarah. This is the Freedom Group, and we're here every Sunday from 12:30 till 2, and we made the rent today. And next Sunday we'll be celebrating. I have a pretty long list here. I'd just like to make sure I've got everybody's name. Is there anyone that's celebrating in the month of January? They would like to raise their hand so I can get a medallion for you. I have you, Linda. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, baby.
That it?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Linda has her 1-year anniversary this month, right, Linda? All right. Let's go back on page 64 now.
Short anymore.
Thank you.
You bet. Made it?
I give you a book.
You got money for medallions and stuff?
I just want to make sure I got it.
Okay.
How are you? I wanted to just show you this book. If you wanted to, at your leisure, read it. Tell me what you think. There's something I highlighted in the introduction. I recommend this book a lot, but I just wanted to.
Some great questions.
Yeah, in all your free time, you want to take a.
I'd love to. Thank
Okay,
you
good.
so much. What you say there, darling?
Nothing, I'm just hanging out with you.
Just hanging out, huh?
Yeah.
She's a caution for the jaybirds, ain't she?
Candy?
Well, darling, guess I better get everybody back. You want to ask them to step in, please, Sarah? Okay, guys, let's find our seats, please.
Somebody dropped these in the other room there. I
Oh,
think it was a man. Is there a man?
gee, let's go out and push the button, see which car squawks, huh? Find your seats, please.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming by. Thank you. Maybe we'll see you next Sunday?
Well, I was gonna go outside more. There you go.
Really good day yesterday, Jim. Really good day yesterday.
I'm really trying not to.
CD.
That went pretty well.
Came out really well on CD.
Was that all right?
Really well.
Oh,
That's one of you probably.
I know.
Probably. Saw that in the store.
That's exactly what I told me that I did. Me too. I'm not, you know, and I.
One of my favorite.
I know. Oh, you're absolutely right. You're right.
are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right.
How you doing, Tyrone?
Great.
I'm looking a little bit without the.
Really good. Where'd that get?
Looking at a little bit.
Yeah, page 65 and 67.
Just don't forget. Just don't forget. I mean, for me,
I
like I
anything
said,
I can bring, it's like.
sometimes I be in this situation
So-
acting out, but then something will just click where somebody give me a phone call and put it back in the
It's so hard for us
perspective.
to.
What about you?
I'm like, damn.
Happiest to be in business. My season.
A lot of times, you know, it's hard for me, you know.
Kids and all.
I mean, like, when I act on my old behavior,
There you go, now you remember.
Yeah, page later. Yeah, page
Wow.
that was,
And what I've done, other person.
Seven kids?
Play
You
the
never watched
story.
out?
One.
That's why you got 7 kids. Yeah, sex to count bases, something like that.
good.
Can you count?
Everything you know how to do, you're doing in your house.
Yeah, my house.
Although the tapes do sound pretty good from the CD to tape.
He's like a 10. I never been to but I
Oh, that hurt me.
Good thing you don't know any crack at it.
What, like cartilage?
I was a crackhead. I was drinking too.
I was nuts one day. I was like 6 years sober.
It was good. You know, like getting back into recovery. It was tough.
I mean, I've seen a lot of, people do it.
I've never seen anybody do that.
I made a lot of money when I was 19 years old. I had a passion that took off nationwide.
Not scratching,
I made, I was a self-made millionaire.
That's something to do with it.
No kidding.
But I got a nickel.
It didn't hurt
I,
going.
you know, when
I still own a lot.
I had my first home
I
done.
was scammed. I bought up most of Detroit, slum, property. I went to these auctions.
I didn't have the second one done until my daughter was a teenager.
Yeah.
Abandoned and stuff. I just had to take care of them. I had a demolition
So
company.
she and her
I
girlfriend
put them
were
around.
gonna go
A bunch of empty lots. I think I got
stay
them
at
for
theirs then.
300 empty lots, huh? What do you plan to do with those?
So I said, all right, but you have to go with me. So they went with me. Even, I have, if I take things, I have to leave these in a long
Pretty much
time.
useless. I had one piece of
Otherwise,
property that was pretty valuable.
just sits in.
Actually, my son-in-law, I made about $15,000 off of it.
Like silver, I can't wear this very long because it'll start bothering the silver. Yeah, even after all these years.
Anyways, I've been meaning to call you, been so busy.
This one
I must have had 25,000.
I had green hunt the whole
Did
place.
you wear it somewhere and
Trying to
it's
get the
good
clean.
for you?
No, I just shoved that in. It was a thin layer of skin.
But anyway,
I mean, I pierced it.
where do we go? I feel like it worked my first
You
and
know what
second
they did
step.
for, how they pierced mine 25 years ago? Was,
I asked you to take a look at the third step.
froze it.
listened
They
last
froze
week.
my ear.
Ice
They didn't have those phones back then. They froze it, and then they put a cork behind it, and the actual earring had a sharp point. So they just put the actual earring through it, you know,
I like that.
ends up in the cork, from the cork away. And then they had this little clipper, and they just flipped off the sharp
What'd you
end.
put off?
It was so much
Because I
better,
told
so
him
much
I
easier.
didn't want him to
It
swallow
hurt
me
so
for
much
a
less.
couple of years.
You know, I had to go through that process when I sleep at nighttime.
He says some things, it's just so
But
full
it's time
of whack.
Yeah.
He's got 7 years. Sometimes I swear I don't know.
But I got enough holes.
Really?
I'm too old
The
for
scares
that.
me. That's not what I want. And I want
Anyway, the things we do
Yeah.
to ourselves,
I want
right?
recovery.
To be serve ourselves.
You know?
Well, I don't know.
Then
That
when I
just
got that
looks like
bone
it hurts.
medication,
But
I always did. I would not do this again. I would not do my other issues at all. It did hurt. It's just over here.
side effects. But you know what?
well, I'm glad it doesn't hurt anymore. I'm gonna go get my seat.
Good.
Thank you.
Stay away from us.
Yeah, and I come to meetings.
Hi, darling. How you doing?
Okay.
Looking very nice today.
Still have feelings.
You were here last week, right?
The first feeling,
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah,
last week.
I remember you being here.
Oh, you're hanging around for the next one, huh?
You missed a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was in New Mexico,
I'd rather,
There we
I
go.
knew to move myself.
So what, how you doing? So you send me your meeting?
She was like,
Hanging in there.
Dr. Tom over there, he's got taste of everything.
You should let me put them on.
You got the big book, you got the steps, you got the ditch, you got everything. You've been taping
I didn't
2
want to go
years,
back over to Boca.
sometimes 3, 4 times, 5 times a week.
No, I have 78 licenses.
My first reports,
Wow.
That's right.
But it's the same.
But it's the same.
Some guy is putting these tapes out on the net now. He told me the other day that he's getting responses Australia and all this.
It's fat on
I
it.
just get up and go.
I post.
I can hear
Yeah, well,
volume, but you know
we
what
may
it
need
is, it's the
to,
tones.
It's the
With
I
me,
may need to
it's
talk
just
to
a
you.
little
That's the
deafness.
next
It is? I don't know.
Like when
I
I'm
think,
in
I
a,
think it's
if
being
I'm in a
designed right now
crowd,
by professionals.
Can you look in the other
but
room?
I'm not sure what's
No, they look in your car, maybe it's in your car. That's like dropping in my car sometimes. I always just tell it.
if I'm in a crowded room, I can't hear anybody.
I use macro media.
Well, I don't care what volume my wife's
A lot of people are using
speaking, you know, I just don't hear
Nobody
it.
really knows how to use it.
When she talks to me, it goes in here and out there. She says, oh, do you hear what I say? What? Yeah?
Yeah.
I can't, yeah, I don't listen. Boy, that really, the noise is
I did your medical rights
I belong to, this South for years.
Cameras,
They're taking it.
I mean, I was like,
I pay so much a year to give you an iPhone. They give you a break or something.
Well, you're gonna be doing
They had to send me
prayer,
to
right?
place.
We prayed for that.
But it's good, they
This
had
we
all
just,
the
this
stuff.
did last night, this is the first part of the work. Get a copy
And then
of
they give you this card.
it. Or we'll be talking about that today, just take them out.
You have to go to the hospital.
Well, all I'm saying
Yes,
is,
yes,
search
and I showed this to the
decision.
hospital, all my stuff is on there. Or if you find me in the hospital, I can't say something, or whatever it is, or I just take
Once
this,
is plenty, if you
they turn
mean.
it over, they call this number, and they get all the information.
That's the way it must be. Do you have
Yeah,
anybody?
it's, you can order one, it's cheap, it's about,
Yeah, we'll be talking about
50
that
bucks.
today.
I got a number of years. It's about 50 bucks, and I pay my membership every year, like $35 a year. Because once I had to go to the.
Miss you yesterday.
Like they asked me at the hospital, I said, gee, I forget, I said, all these people, they can all get. Yeah.
I'm gonna type.
And they'll send me an
Much better.
application, fill it out, and the drawing.
What we're gonna see is you and maybe me.
So like maybe today we could just, I can get my first to get started.
I like it. He's working.
You're listening during the meeting, you'll hear everything you need to know.
And not only that, I
I would stay after, but
I got my back in my car, I was in my meds, you know?
back down south at 220.
What's wrong with me, you know?
But you have my phone number, right?
It's,
I think I'll probably be in.
it's fun, this way, God forbid I pass out, I get in the back. You know, when I'm allergic to and all that stuff. A number of friends of mine have this.
They have to do that. Telecommunications Act.
Are you leaving?
It's that situation.
Pump station,
Do some
network of
because I'm a secretary.
I just tried to say.
My father owns a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of
you want me to come
Jones
in?
Canadian. My father bought so much of their stuff.
Pictures, aren't they?
I've been buying this stuff.
A little bit, I just read about it.
I've been reading about it for years. It's the ultimate technology. They're figure it out. I mean, they figure out 80 years out right now. You know, they escaped from microscope. Before, you know, so they are getting
It's, oh God. My winter's like a picture of him in through the drywall. Oh, I said, I didn't do that before.
light travel.
Find him? Find the glasses? Where were the car?
Par for the
course.
When you got 3 weeks sobriety, that's
I got glasses all over the house, I can never find them.
best friend, Derek. Very successful, he's actually one of my dad's.
Yeah, well, that's what's
I'm getting ready to go.
Sit there and saw the damn
I'm starting to work business, selling server space. That's and in a sense, because I'm developing. My goal is to develop virtual real estate. Valuable virtual real estate. Where it's worth 20 to 30 million, selling.
I know what you're talking about. What I'm planning to do is pretty much the same thing. Each one is a little profit.
Yeah, he did.
By the time I have 50,000 customers, $1 million in investment. And so I started out with $1 million.
You see, right now, what I do, my big thing is I position and search engines. I made some software. I break. The easiest one for me to do is Google, because it's going to concentrate on the platform that runs off of. They changed their algorithm to 30 years. Well, they do it just, I don't think it's more about control, it's positioning in the search engine. So it adds that camaraderie to the business and things that makes them money. So they're changing their algorithm all the time that reads your backdoor pages. And,
You said you wanted to take a problem?
program backdoor pages. What I do is I've actually specific.
Hey, 3 people talking to you at the same time.
I did for a company, it's supposed to be $40 million next year. I can really do something big. I have the means to produce, so like I'm not there. Once I do, I can send you traffic. They pay me $25 an hour, 10 years. Webmaster. Some companies pay me money out of the year.
Okay, right after.
They send me $600 a month. Really do that.
I know.
You know, but eventually, when they need me, yeah. I just picked up, I got 1, 2, 3 websites.
Just as I was walking out the door, I checked, and I was like, wow, you did all that legwork. One is fabulous. I'm gonna call them. Yeah, I don't know what year my seats are, but they're 3 of them attached.
But this one I learned about.
I don't think so, but they look back on that.
Yeah.
This industry, it's moving so fast, you can be a millionaire overnight in the industry.
Sure.
Okay, I haven't, you know, I didn't have time to look.
Prices change every 15
Right.
I have a guy that has a business here, I'm in a partnership with, he does $12.5 million a year.
So what three sizes will take
So
that
I'm in a partnership. Actually, one of the guys that I deal with, he's probably the third largest traffic controller in the world. Internet traffic. His name's Sam. He's a Jewish guy. He's got all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can make something happen instantly if I want to. It costs money, but money's not bullshit. Anyways, I'm gonna listen up. You got my number. I'll probably give you a call throughout the week here. I gotta sign some contracts for the next couple of days.
Okay.
Jim, where do you live?
North Lauderdale.
Ah, yeah.
About 25 minutes up 441.
I'm here about 10 years, I still don't know my way around. I'm within about a 3-mile radius, that's it.
Don't forget to tell Bud there's food back there.
Oh, he'll find it, he smelled it at home. What are you kidding? Go. He goes like this, coconut tree. It's muffins, he knows.
Hello.
I'll see you later.
Good morning. How are you?
I don't know. I'm doing okay.
You remember how far we got last week?
I've got a marker in my book.
Please.
I think it's in the right place.
Should be on page 63, I think.
I think I moved it.
Huh?
I think I moved my marker from the last week.
I'm not sure whether we got, do you remember whether we got to the prayer last week or not? The third step prayer? Huh?
We did go through the prayer step by step.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we're down, I guess we're starting at the bottom of page 63 today. Getting into step 4 now. Okay. That's good.
You still got like 3 minutes, yeah?
Huh?
You got 3 minutes?
Yeah.
You miss like California, Jim?
Do I miss California? Oh, I miss the mountains.
You ever go back there?
I would if that's where God sends me. I got an awful lot of work to do around here right now.
Yeah, I like the mountains. I spent about a month a year in Las Vegas.
Well, if Florida, South Florida had mountains, it'd be an absolute paradise.
Oh, yeah.
I guess you can't have everything,
It's
though.
like a pool table.
Yeah.
Flat.
Good morning.
I used to live out by La Jolla 10 years ago.
Did you?
Oh,
That's
nice.
beautiful there.
Oh,
Tom, right? I put my seeds in the collection, so I know you don't even break.
I just brought one in, I got some in the car, I don't have a whole lot with me.
Maybe next Sunday. So this way I don't repeat some
Did you
ones.
buy some?
Yeah, they're fine.
Oh, okay, well then, this is the best meeting that I recorded.
I used to.
That would be so easy.
Yeah. But, he's got a couple conferences.
Really? Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. Because I spent a lot of time in the car, so back and forth to work, so. Appreciate it. And maybe next time you'll fix some more.
Can you make copies?
No.
You know anybody who can?
No, not really.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'll just have to make more.
Yeah, well, make more than what I think you're doing like $3 to $5. I'm becoming a
Oh,
gym.
yeah.
Yeah, but you know money. I'm becoming like a gym groupie.
Okay, good.
I do my steps. But I'm doing my special responses
Then I'll be going home or
So, good, thanks, and you? All right, guys, let's get going. Want to welcome you to the Freedom Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is our regular Sunday afternoon Big Book study meeting. My name is Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Happy to see all of you here. This meeting is an hour and a half in length. We take a 10-minute break at the halfway point. Today we'll be starting our reading and discussion at the bottom of page 63, which means that we're now going to be considering the fourth step. Before we get started with the Big Book, however, we'll start off with a moment of silent meditation. We'll say the Serenity Prayer together. Thank you. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And this group likes to do a unison on the definition of AA, so let's do it now. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other. They may solve their common problem, help others together. We are self-supporting to our own contributions, and AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you very much. And do we have anyone visiting with us today from out of town, other groups, out of state, outer space? Anyone here for the first time for this meeting? Yes, sir.
I'm out calling. My name is Len. I'm a member of the, as Bill sees the group in Coral Spring. First time at this meeting.
Your name is Len? Hey, Len. Happy to have you. And behind Len is?
Hi, my name is Frank. I'm an addict. I usually go to NA meetings all over, but Howard told me to come to this one. So.
Howard did, huh?
He's supposed to be
Okay.
here, but he told me to always
All right. Let's give him a hand. We're happy to have you guys with us. Do we have anyone who's been out improving their resume, just coming back? Anyone who's brand new? All right. It's customary and traditional in this group to read a portion of Chapter 5 from the Big Book. Who would like to do that today? Please.
Hi, my name is Sherry. I'm an alcoholic.
Page 58 in the book, please.
Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed that path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not a fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. But some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Committed to God, to ourselves, and to know the human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asking to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A. They were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B. That probably no human parent could have believed our alcoholism. And C. That God could and would be resolved.
Very good, Sharon. Thank you. Okay. Open your books, please, to page 63. We're going to be reading from here on. We're going to be into the 4th step, but let's kind of recap a little bit here and see where we are and where we're going and how all this stuff all ties together.